Welcome to Season 4 of the Lead with Coffee podcast, where we continue the journey into how you can change the culture in your business and your home through simple leadership practices. Grab a cup of coffee and get ready to join into today's conversation. Welcome back to Lead with Coffee. Today, we want to give you some insight into how we are implementing a shorter work week. We've teased it in a bunch of our podcasts before, but we want to share with you what's working, what's not working, and some strategies we have, and just kind of how we rolled it out. And I cannot believe that you would not be familiar with this conversation. But for the one person out there that has not been paying attention, the world is shifting. I don't know if it started with employees or with leaders or where it started, but over the past few years, this movement has really gotten traction all the way down to Senate bills trying to say that a full-time employee is 32 hours instead of 40 hours. And so we want to dive in today with a little bit of history, and David loves this part, of how we got to the 40-hour work week and how we got stuck there and what we're doing at our company to shift out of it.
I think it's actually crazy to realize, and I heard this probably a year or so ago, and then I did the research to make sure I had the facts right, but around 1926, Henry Ford was the one that implemented the shorter work week, the 40-hour week, because prior to that, and the 8-hour shift, because prior to that, people were working 12 to 16 hours a day in manufacturing. And so what he realized was that people were working so much that no one had time to buy this luxury that they were building. So he passed this thing and said, okay, people are going to work 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, and that has stuck forever. And I mean, we're almost going on 100 years now. And a lot of people have changed that. We definitely see that the younger generation definitely does not want to work 40 hours.
Yeah.
They want to work a lot less. They rather just look at their phone and the money just roll in.
Oh, my gosh.
And some of them have figured that out.
TikTok will just make them millions, right?
Right. And for the couple that's worked for in YouTube, awesome.
Yeah.
But for the majority that has to have a hourly job,
a steady income,
it's a whole different story.
Yeah. I think that we really got some exposure to this maybe about a year ago. We were listening to some different podcasts and independently, and I said something to David about a book called Shorter, and said, I was listening to a podcast, and a lot of what they were talking about was really resonating as a small business of rethinking our thinking in the sense of, why are we doing what we're doing? And is it working? Or is there a way to focus on productivity versus hours worked? And if we shifted our mindset to focus on what could we produce in a shorter amount of time, what kind of efficiencies would we find, and how could that impact what we're doing and give our staff the flexibility that they have enjoyed on and off over the last 2 years? And so have we, to be honest. I think a part of working from home was that you could find time for yourself. You could do appointments and things differently, and you had margin. And so realizing that we are really a generation, I believe, of we're not going to do it the way we've always done it because someone tells me I have to.
Right.
Right? And I think as a multi-generation small business, the way you lead is very different than the way your dad leads. And we can see the generational gap of how he implemented business and how you've come up. And in your generation and the leaders that motivate you are changing the way you lead.
Yeah, and gosh, you just think about even coming into the workforce, there was this thing called a fax machine. And that was the quickest way to get printed technology from one person to another. Emails were kind of there, but if you needed something, you had to fax it over.
Yeah.
And that's in the 90s.
Yeah,
and
not
now
that long ago.
No, and now in 2022, you need something, let me text that document to you. I mean, it's
Right.
instantaneous. The technology has completely changed everything. Even, say, architects who had to hand draw prints can now do it on, and have been for decades, doing electronically and the copy paste. There are so many things that have made our work more efficient. So what we've done is filled in the rest of the time with trying to get more stuff done.
Yeah.
To stick with the 40 hours instead of saying, okay, if this process took me 8 hours before and I can do it in 2 hours, I can certainly get twice as much done in 4 hours and still have a little margin, right?
Right.
If you focus on that, you want the margin. And a lot of people aren't. They're still focused on, and a lot of companies are still built that you got to clock in for 8 hours a day and take your 15-minute breaks and your half an hour lunch, and that is how life just works.
Yeah.
And you don't question it because that's all you know. But others don't feel that way. We don't feel that way. That, as Sarah was mentioned earlier, the quality over the quantity, quality of time over the quantity of time, are much more important in the direction that we're going.
So I'll reveal my strategy of how I work new ideas through David. He gets to get some insight too. When I have an idea or something that I'm pondering about and feels like it's part of the movement the company needs to make, I'll plant a seed. And I'll say, hey, have you heard about this? I feel like this might be something for our company in the next year or so. And I'll watch his reaction. And he was a pretty firm, yeah, right. We're not changing our business model last year. When I said this to him, and it was like, how would that work with clients? And we bill by the hour. So like, we're going to reduce our revenues, and what's this going to look like? And obviously a lot of questions, which is good because questions means that he's going to think about it. He's going to start to research it. And it wasn't like this idea that he just was like, heck no, we're not doing this. It was like he had questions. So he was a little bit intrigued. And then he has mentors. We listen to very different podcasts. So one thing we know is when the people that I'm listening to and the people that he's listening to have the same messaging and it's coming to us, then there's something in that we're supposed to think about and we're supposed to take action on. And I think this is how that played out, right?
Yeah, I was listening to Focus on This with Michael Hyatt, and they had over this, I think in 2020, they implemented the shorter workday. They're only working 6 days an hour or 6 hours a day. It works better that way. 6 hours a day to create a shorter week, and they've actually gotten more efficient and more done in that time because they were able to frame it correctly.
So I was listening to a podcast, and they recommended the book Shorter. So I started listening to the audiobook Shorter, and it just has been evolving. So 2 months ago, we brought it to our team and said, we're going to do this on a trial basis for 3 to 6 months. And we have the right to go back at any time if we're finding that it's not working. But here's the parameters. We're going to have 8-hour days Monday through Thursday, and we're going to have 4-hour days on Fridays. And after that 4 hours on Friday, we're not going to ask you to work. We're not going to email you to-do lists. We're not going to call you. We are all, as a company, going to tell our clients that these are our working hours. If we have a project, that's a different story. But on a normal week, we should be able to get our work done in the 36 hours we have allotted, unless there's a critical reason we need to be on a job site. So that was the first part. And you would think people would be like jumping for joy. That is not how this works. They're waiting for the catch. Are you going to reduce my pay? What does this really mean? Are you going to make me work 10-hour days Monday through Thursday? Because I don't trust you. I don't trust this process. But by doing it as this trial, they get to see your intent as a leader and their response to that as an employee. So that was part of it. we really focused on work completed versus hours worked. And as leaders, that's a lot of work on David and I, because we're really saying, are you changing your pace? Because to do this, you have to change your pace. You have to change your intention to be a peak performer Monday through Thursday in the 8 hours you have, and you're kind of catching up on the little outlying things on Friday. That does not mean you can come in and do the pace you did at 40 hours.
Yep.
Right? Where you eased in, spent a lot of time on email, had 1 hour meetings, an hour and a half meetings, long lunches, all these types of things. It's like, if you want this, you have to work for this. And that means no meeting longer than 45 minutes. If you have a meeting longer than 45 minutes, you need to ask yourself why. Is it for you to kill time? Are the people on your meeting killing time? Does anyone really want to be on a meeting for more than 45 minutes?
Some people do, yes, for
hours.
hours.
To listen. We don't. So time does not equal efficiency. So your 1 hour meeting can probably be done by an email if you really wanted to and be more efficient. And it also means that you have to really have strong planning. And so that was the launch 2 months ago. So here's what's working. Our team is loving the flexibility.
Yeah.
They liked working from home and they liked working in the office. So Fridays are work from home. And so that is focus time as a team in the office with our clients Monday through Thursday. And Friday, you can sit in your pajamas and do your 4 hours of work. We don't really care if you're not going on clients' sites or Zoom. No pajamas. We have a Zoom policy now.
Yeah.
But that's really working, don't you think? That flexibility?
I do. And just a thought on what we were talking about before is now that technology has allowed us to have meetings virtually, I guarantee most of our staff and the people that are in this type of business spent more than 4 hours on the road going to and from meetings. Mm-hmm. So as far as the amount of work time at your desk, might not have changed much. Mm-hmm. And so we're given that flexibility. Like, we know that you were probably driving these 4 hours, so have them at home. Mm-hmm. Work from home in the morning and then those last 4 hours off. So that almost equals out for the most part. Mm-hmm. And I think that, again, the efficiencies, we saved a lot of time and get a lot more done. I think for the most part, this has worked well. I know that it's nice for us to be able to still come in here on Fridays mm-hmm. where it's quiet and we can do a lot of strategic focus time, mm-hmm. Which has been really good for us. As far as the team, as Sarah said, there are still projects that we might have to visit on a Friday, and it might be the entire Friday. It could be the entire weekend, depending on what the project is. But overall, I think people have really taken advantage of the time at home on Fridays. Mm-hmm. Does that answer your question?
Sure.
Okay.
We'll elaborate it out. It was about flexibility, but yes, it does.
Yeah.
I feel like team engagement is up because now they know if they have a project they're working on together, they're getting it done earlier in the week.
Yeah.
And we've moved a lot of things up in our schedules that normally would be done on like a Thursday to Tuesday. And a lot of our meetings are Mondays and Tuesdays now. So that way we can hit that critical part of our week when we have the most focus and most time. And because then all the fires start to come. I don't know about your industry, but our industry, Thursdays and Fridays are when all the fires are going to hit. And that's just the nature of how things work. And so we really plan for that margin a little bit. And I've noticed that there's staff are not taking as much time off for doctor's appointments because they can do that now on Fridays. And so I think that there's been some positive. There's also, just more effectiveness in our work as we start to really talk to them about what it means to be a peak performer and how we are continuing the conversation in our staff meetings every week of what our expectations are and making those really clear that through this trial, you have to elevate, you have to move at a different pace. And that hasn't been easy for everyone. Nope. I think that's part of what's not working. We have, I would say for 90% of our team, 80% of our team, this is working well.
Mm-hmm.
For 20% of our team, they're very much wired to the old school mindset of, I have to have butt in seat for 40 hours to be a good employee.
Right.
And that's their margin of a good employee. And for us as leaders, your quality of the work you're producing is what makes you a good employee, not that you just physically showed up.
You're right. Yeah.
And that's a challenge for some to understand. It's like, you showing up for work today and barely producing anything is not what I'm looking for. I'd rather have you here for 4 hours at your best than 8 hours like a zombie.
Right. And it's kind of like, if you're going on vacation, if you're leaving for vacation on Thursday, but on Monday you have 5 days worth of work, I guarantee you finish all that work by Wednesday, because you know there's a deadline and you are going to go on vacation without having to worry about it.
Definitely.
And that's kind of the same mindset that we're trying to teach everyone, is like, look, we're not asking you to exhaust yourself. We're asking you to be more efficient. Think of wasted time, whatever that might be. A lot of it could be not really planning your day well, and you're stuck just chasing emails all day, and whatever that latest fire is, because someone else's to-do list is now your to-do list. Instead of making a plan at the beginning of the week and the beginning of each day, saying, these are my highest priorities to get done today, and then once I get past those, I can do these other things. And I guarantee if more people had that mindset, there would be so much more efficiency in the workforce right now.
Yeah, definitely. So the other challenge we are having is streamlining their business practices, right? So this 45-minute meeting is one of those things where we've said it. Are they really implementing it? Here and there, right? And so I think it's just one of those, like, well, I've always done it this way, and I always do my agenda this way, and we kill a lot of time in the first 20 minutes of the meeting looking at stuff we could look at on an email, right? So like figuring out how we change our business practices is one of those things that is part of what we have to keep working better at. But clients, as soon as we did this, the devil's like, it's not going to work, and I'm going to make sure it doesn't work, because I'm going to make sure every critical problem happens Friday at 2 o'clock, right? And as leaders and owners, this is something we're implementing. We're trying to live it out at the same time. And so realizing that what typically happens is our clients are not really doing much on Fridays. And all of a sudden we have these new clients that are like, Friday at 2, this is when we're working.
Getting warmed up.
Yeah. And then I'm going to keep emailing you till 9 o'clock at night. And it's like, what are you doing? So, figuring out what that boundary looks like, what's the language look like for the employees to say to the client? Do they have to respond? We have a very clear policy that you do not have to respond to anything after 5 o'clock. It can be responded to the next morning unless it's a project that's actively working at night, which is rare.
And let me just pause on that, because this happened recently where there was an email that came in after hours, and they thought it was critical that it was responded to immediately. And it was a big hoopla, messy. The next morning, I looked at the email and I really analyzed it the next morning, and we sat down with everyone and had a conversation. I'm like, this is how I'm reading this email. And it was very clear there was just a question asked, not that there was a demand that I needed an answer tonight.
Right.
There was absolutely no reason besides what our staff put on themselves that they needed to get that worked up. There just was nothing there, nothing critical that could not have been addressed by 10 a.m. the next day. And these are the things we sat down and had a long conversation of, like, remember we've talked about responding instead of reacting? That reaction of I have to respond right away tonight so they have the information is not good for you, because then you never turn it off and you're thinking about it the entire night. Where if you go, okay, I read this clearly, if you're even reading your emails after hours, I know what the answer is, and I will respond to it first thing in the morning. You put it aside and go enjoy time with your family.
Yeah. I mean, that is the intent of implementing a shorter work week, is that you as a leader have to acknowledge your role in running your organization, and you're the role model. You are what they are watching. So if you're saying to them, my expectation is that you will work 8 hours, and then you're forcing them to work 10, and that's what you're doing, or every email that's coming from you is a Friday afternoon at 2:00 when you've told them, I don't want you to respond, I want you to have balance and family time. It's like your messaging has to match your actions. And that's, I think, the hard part, is that for this to work, the leadership team has to understand the boundaries for the employees.
Yep.
And you have to really follow and implement that very tightly in this 3-month process. So that's all part of that generational part also of this is how business is done. And I don't necessarily agree with this shorter work week thing. I think that you're going to reduce our revenues and impact our clients. And how will you know if you don't test it? How will you know if you don't push your team by saying, if you want this, you got to show up for this. And it's going to be by your productivity, and your participation, not just your physical presence in this office. So the other thing that's not working great for our company is realizing that each of us really oversees different clients. And some of those clients maybe work a lot more on Fridays than they do on Mondays.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to implement this, and everyone has the same schedule. And realizing that, should we consider that there's a half day in the week for each employee that might work best for that employee, versus like everyone's not here on Fridays. And I don't know that we would do that, because we also have an ulterior motive that on the Fridays, that is our time to do the other parts of the business that we need to be able to focus on without the staff here. That's part of owning. You have different responsibilities than your staff do, right? You're running and working clients, but you also have this whole other layer of, how do I move this company forward? And so it's things even like this, to have the space to do the podcast. So there's different things, but I would encourage you, if you have the ability to try this in your company, give it a 30-day trial. See what happens, see what works, what doesn't work for your staff. And what we're going to do is give it another 3 months after the 3 months with some tweaks, and see how we can make it better. And go from there, because look, we have nothing to lose, right? At this point, we were already working 40 hours. We're working less. Yeah. Well, our staff were.
Yeah.
Working less, focusing more.
Yeah.
With the end result, having the ability to live life, right? And build the life that you want, and not just feel like I'm running from work every day.
Yeah. And I think that, last thought on this is, we want you to have some margin for your family. Mm-hmm. We have 3 teenage boys. The youngest one is 15. We only have a few more years with them in the house. And so making sure that we have margin, that we can, in the afternoons, go watch a baseball game or a track meet or whatever the case may be, that we're not telling all of our staff, you are here 12 hours a day, and just like setting that role. Mm-hmm. Like, for me was the role that was set for me. I rather spend the time having the margin to enjoy our family and personal things, and instead of just having to be here present. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like the more time I am here, the more growth the company's going to have, and it's just such a different mindset. Mm-hmm. So something to think about. Your kids are not going to ever remember how much you worked. They're always going to remember how you made them feel and the time you spent with them. So consider that as you move into a more efficient work week. We appreciate that you decided to hang out and spend some time with us discussing life and leadership. It would mean the world to us if you would share this episode on social media to increase our online presence. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a minute to rate it and review it wherever you listen. Mahalo!